Let's begin. Let's begin our webinar. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out this morning virtually to this webinar. And we, of course, are going to be discussing our skilled residence pathways. My name is Lauren Burton. I am an engagement partner in the customer branch, Immigration New Zealand. Most of you will know me and know my face. I'm here with you again. So lucky you. And I'm going to take you through the first half of the webinar. Then I'm going to hand it over to some of my wonderful colleagues and they will introduce themselves. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to start you off with our MB Karakia, just as a way to start off our morning and welcome you into the virtual space. So next slide, please. All right, Karakia. Say it with me if you like. Tawhia tō mana kia mau kia maia. Ka huru takawaro ke te pai kahurangi. Kei reira te oronga moku. Ma mahi tahi, ka ora, ka puawai. A mātua mahi katoa, ka pono, ka tika, tihei Māori ora. All right. So what will we be discussing today? We will be discussing our skilled residence pathways, our skilled migrant category, of course, green list and sector agreements. So all of those three, our processing approach, the changes to the AWV, as you'll hear us refer to it, the accredited employer work visa, of course. We'll have some common questions that you asked during your registration at the very end. And we'll, of course, have our live Q&A slot, which will be run by my colleague Brendan and a wonderful live panel. So just a few things about the live Q&A. As always, upvote. Any questions that really resonate with you that you feel are really important, please upvote them and we'll answer them first. A common sense approach applies, of course, to the Q&A. Please don't ask any questions about specific applications, and please don't, make any comments or ask for, anything around something that's not listed in front of you right now. Yeah, and we will not answer it if it's not related to what is on front of your screen right now. And I think that is it. Oh, we'll be recording the webinar, so we'll send you out a link as well, as always. So don't worry if you miss anything, and don't worry if you don't catch anything, you can listen to it later. All right, let's begin. So we're going to start with the green list. So why was the green list introduced? On the 28th of August 2019, the Cabinet Economic Development Committee, the DEV, agreed as part of establishing the AWV policy to a work to residence pathway for people who had earned more than 200% of the national median income while working for an accredited employer. Cabinet agreed on the 19th of April 2022 to implement two prioritised and streamlined residence pathways for people in occupations on the green list: straight to residence and work to residence, and that's that tier 1 and tier 2 differentiation that you will all be very aware of. The green list, of course, makes it easier for employers to hire and attract migrants for specified, high-skilled, hard-to-fill occupations with clear residency pathways for eligible people. The green list only contains a small number of highly skilled roles that have been identified as being in demand globally and nationally significant. The green list will be reviewed every 3 years, reflecting these are the selected occupations that are nationally significant and globally competitive. All right, next slide. So why are there sector agreements? Sector agreements, of course, provide targeted immigration settings for specific occupations. These can include limited exceptions to the median wage requirements for hiring migrants on the accredited employer work visa, of course, and or residence pathways. These settings include pay rates, timeframes, and relevant roles. They've been developed in consultation. I think this is really important. They've been developed in consultation with key sector bodies, unions, and government agencies. They've been tailored to the specific workforce needs and conditions of the sector. And we're going to go through a couple of these later on, the transport sector agreement and the aged care or the care sector agreement. And these provide exemptions from the AWV median wage threshold. Some sectors, and I think this is also really important, some sectors have limits set on how many migrants they can recruit, as you will all be aware. In the sector agreement, they are called capped and uncapped sectors. In exchange, employers in these sectors agree to work towards improving their sectors so they rely less on migrant workers. And now we come to the skilled migrant category. So why a change was made to our skilled migrant category, we'll all be very familiar with this. So of course it was traditionally our main residence category based on skills and employment. And we've made changes to sort of 4 points that you can see on the screen there. The changes are designed to align with the immigration rebalance. The proposed changes aim to set a clear skills threshold to align with the key principles of the immigration rebalance of training and employing New Zealanders in the first instance, reducing reliance on lower skilled migrant labour and incentivising employers to improve wages, conditions and lived productivity. The focus of proposed changes is therefore on granting residence to people who can fill medium to long-term skill needs that would be too hard or take time to fill from the domestic labour market. Secondly, giving more certainty to migrants and employers. Certainty is a really key part of both attracting migrants to New Zealand and treating them well. And I'd like to reiterate or just really sort of make this part in bold for you. So treating migrants well includes being clear about who is unlikely to be eligible for residence to enable potential migrants to make informed decisions about their immigration options from the very beginning. At the same time as providing clear residence pathways, we want to avoid people becoming well settled in New Zealand without a realistic pathway to residence and the rights and protections that residence provides. Improving processing times. The current point system is complex to administer, and the proposed changes aim to simplify processes where possible to support faster decision making and reduce the time required to process each application. We aim to reduce immigration and labour market risks. The proposed changes also aim to close off access to roles shown to be prone to the misuse of visas and supplier-induced demand. So what do I mean by that? Where jobs are available primarily or only to support migrants to gain residence, rather than because of the actual labour market need or shortage. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you already have all of these key dates written down somewhere, circled in bold, and we don't need to go too much in depth into this slide, but the last draw for the current skilled migrant category was done on the 16th of October, 16th of August, and the new SMC will open on the 9th of October, which is coming up very soon. So the next slide will be about a summary of pathways. And I think it's really nice sort of infographic to have there on your screen. So you can see how these 3 pathways interact with each other, and they really work side by side or alongside each other. And I don't think we need to go too much into detail with them. We've already talked about the green list, the tier 1, tier 2, the sector agreements. We'll talk about those in more detail in a couple of minutes, and our skilled migrant category as well. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll spend a bit of time on this infographic here, and it's quite structured. So this really breaks down how the points system will work in the new skilled migrant category. And this was something that was asked a lot during registration. So thank you for that. So the structure of the new points system offers several ways for people to demonstrate their skill level. Applicants must have at least 6 points to be eligible. This can be made up from 3 to 6 points based on either New Zealand Aotearoa occupational registration, recognised qualifications or income, and 1 point per year of work in Aotearoa, New Zealand in a skilled job up to a maximum of 3 points. You can only claim points from one skill category from occupational registration, recognised qualification or income, and you can see that there on the screen there. If you haven't reached 6 points, you can then accrue more points using experience from your skilled job. I'll leave that on the screen just for another couple of seconds for us to just taken as much as we can from that infographic. It's a really good one. And then we'll move on to the next slide. Next slide, please. All right. So this next slide contains just a couple of really interesting tidbits. So firstly, the new expression of interest, or EOI. I want you to picture the new SMC skilled migrant category application form like so. EOI at the top. It's going to be a really automated process. Applicants will answer a series of eligibility questions to make sure that they're eligible to apply and that they do not pay the fee unnecessarily or incorrectly. So the EOI will be an automated check. There'll be no separate fee, and eligible applicants who confirm they meet the criteria will receive an automated ITA or invitation to apply, that second tier. And following this will allow them to immediately move on and complete the full SMC application form and pay the associated fee. Just a really important note for everybody here. When you fill in the EOI form, you are making an official declaration to us, to Immigration New Zealand. Please answer truthfully and accurately, as not doing so may impact your visa outcome. Secondly, on there, we've got a little part in here about skilled work experience, where we receive quite a few queries about this and questions about this regularly. So skilled work experience in New Zealand does not necessarily have to be relevant to your qualification, your employment, or offer of employment. Skilled work can be undertaken on any visa that allows for full-time work. And obviously that includes a whole host of visas. So you've got your AEWV, you might be on a critical purpose visitor visa, you might be on a specific purpose work visa, or a working holiday visa, for example. So I think those 2 points there that we've got on the screen are two really important tidbits for you to take away. Next slide, please. Another really common question that comes up is, well, if ANZGO codes are selected by an employer at the AEWV or accredited employer job check stage, and the wrong ANZGO code is accidentally selected, let's say, will the employee be locked into this ANZGO code at the residency stage? And look, from our perspective, while a person should enter the ANZGO occupation code, which best matches their employment on the SMC online form, of course, an assessment of whether the person meets the skilled work experience requirements is not locked in to the ANZGO code selected by the employer. And it can be based on evidence provided at the residence stage. A person would also be given the opportunity to comment on any potentially prejudicial information on their resident visa application before a decision is made. And of course, to be approved a residence visa under the new SMC, your current skilled job or job offer must be for an accredited employer. Your employer doesn't necessarily have to be accredited at the time that you do your EOI, for example, but they must be accredited before a decision is made on your residence application. Thank you. Next slide. Next slide is going to talk about our new interim visa for our skilled migrant category. It will work as many other interim visas do. However, there'll be a couple of differences. So the new interim visa settings will allow the applicants to remain in New Zealand lawfully while awaiting the outcome of their application. This will be for a maximum of 24 months. They'll be automatically granted to whoever meets the eligibility criteria and whose current temporary visa is expiring, as they work now. So the conditions of their expiring visa will apply to the interim visa. And these interim visas will be granted with travel conditions so that applicants can travel in and out of New Zealand. Important note here as well is you do not have to be physically in New Zealand at the time when your residence is decided. And that was the question that was asked as well. All right, back to our green list. So some recent green list changes. all green list straight to residence applicants will be required to have a job or job offer that meets the median wage requirement. Of course, also acknowledging that there are many that have occupation-specific wage thresholds already. Green list work to residence applicants will be required to meet the median wage requirement at both the start of the work experience and at the time they are applying for residence. If the median wage increases during the 24-month period, they do not need to meet the new threshold until they make their residence application. And we've discussed this before, meeting it at the start and then meeting it at the residence application. Only caveat with that is that if they change employment, they will be required to meet the median wage applicable at that time. There will be an exemption to this requirement for people in the green list work to residence occupations who hold a non-AWV work visa and applied for it before the 29th of September 2023. These people will only be required to meet the median wage requirement at the time they apply for residence. And just coming to the market rate there. So does the applicant need to be paid a market rate as well as meeting the median wage? So acceptable employment under the green list requires that the employment is genuine, of course, and this can include consideration of whether the applicant is being paid the market rate for that job. So the next slide, just about some of these work to residence changes to green list and sector agreements. You will all, I'm sure most of you will already be aware of this, eligibility being extended to include non-accredited employer work visa holders, and just extending out that criteria to, as you can see, they're all temporary work visa holders, and CPVV holders with work rights will be able to claim work experience in a relevant role gained from 29th of September 2021. All right, let's move on to our sector agreements. We'll just briefly go through the transport sector agreement with the 2-year residence pathway. The following professions will have access to this pathway. Bus drivers working for an eligible employer in an eligible role. Employers will have a median wage exemption set at $28 an hour when hiring bus drivers for an eligible role on an AWV. Truck drivers, of course, they require class 4 or 5 license. Ship masters, they require a certain endorsement on their, I'm going to say visa, that's not right, but a certain endorsement. And then deckhands, they must hold a qualified deck crew or higher qualification by the time they apply for residence. So if you want to know any more detail about that, obviously all the details on our website, as always. Other roles covered by the transport sector agreement are not exempt from the median wage threshold, as the market rate for skilled workers in these roles is already above the median wage. So in the transport sector agreement, all roles, as I just mentioned, will be able to apply for residency if they meet the criteria from the 29th of September 2023, if they've completed the 2 years of work. And we're going to move on to the care workforce sector agreement, which I'm sure that most of you are really fully aware of, but we just thought we would mention it because it's really important. The care workforce, you've got that 2-year work to residence visa once again, and the pathway allows people such as healthcare workers who are paid, as you see there on your screen, New Zealand, $28.25 per hour. This is level 4 healthcare worker assistant, for example. And will allow them to gain residence after 24 months. All right. Slide. I believe I have one more slide. All right, so just briefly touching on residence pathways closing. I believe we sent out some comms about this very recently. 31st of August, 2023, coming up very soon, the TAE or Talent Accredited Employer and LTSSL work visa holders who were outside of New Zealand due to the border closure during COVID-19 will no longer be able to submit further applications to restart their residence pathway. Thank you so much. And I believe I am handing over to my colleague, Brendan. Thank you,
Lauren.
Brendan.
Thank you, Lauren. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Brendan Thornley. I'm an engagement partner with Immigration New Zealand. Now, we still have a fair amount of information to cover over the next few slides, so just stick with me while we work through it all. Okay, let's have a look at processing times. So straightforward applications that have all the required information will be decided within 6 to 8 weeks. Now, when we talk about straightforward applications, this simply means it contains all the required information with no third-party checks or follow-up required. Now, one of the real positive changes under the new settings, applications will be resourced to demand and there will be no caps on places available. This will apply to all skilled residence visas, SMC, green list, and sector agreements. This replaces the previous planning range, which set an indicative number of residence places available each year. This planning range was useful to manage the number of people gaining residence in Aotearoa, New Zealand each year. However, it often prevented people with valuable skills from gaining residence, as there were limited places available. So in the first few years, the number of people coming through the skilled migrant category under the new setting, it's expected to be relatively low. Now, this is due to the onshore migrant workers gaining residence through the one-off 2021 resident visa. And these settings will be monitored and adjustments may be made if necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, so our processing approach. To enable the most efficient processing, please submit a complete application with sufficient employment and work experience information, required registration information, qualification assessments, partnership evidence pertaining to 12 months living together, and custody documents, for example. The more information we receive up front, the faster a file can be allocated and completed at our end. Now, submitting applications that do not have required registration, overseas police checks, or qualification assessments completed impacts our overall processing timeframes. Applications that require third-party security checks do not have a processing timeframe afforded to them, nor does escalation apply to these. Expiring temporary visas, unfortunately, are not factors that can influence priority escalation, priority clearances, or result in waiving of required documents. Also, just as a note, please keep INZ up to date with any material change in circumstance during the application process. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at some of the changes to the accredited employer work visa, which I'll refer to as the AWV. These changes take effect on 27th November 2023. So there will be a maximum continuous stay for everyone who has an AWV, increasing the length of the AWV for people earning at least the median wage from 3 to 5 years, increasing the length of the AWV for people in care workforce sector who are paid at least the level 3 pay rate, which is currently $26.94 per hour, from 2 to 3 years. So also from the 27th of November 2023, the AWV will change to include a maximum continuous stay and a longer visa length. You can check our website for a full detailed breakdown on the types of roles, their maximum visa length and continuous stay, and time you must spend outside New Zealand after the maximum continuous stay has been reached. And please just note the difference between maximum visa length and maximum continuous stay. Another positive for those who are on the pathway to residence, you will be able to apply for another AWV without spending 12 months out of New Zealand if you can show you are on a pathway to residence. This could include, for example, if you meet the skill threshold, occupational registration, qualification, or income, but need more time to complete your skilled work experience. And we will provide more information on recognised pathways to residence in the future. Okay, so let's look at temporary versus residence. A gap will remain between eligibility for temporary work visa and residence visas. This is appropriate given that the resident visa allows people to live and work in Aotearoa, New Zealand indefinitely. The skilled migrant category is designed to address medium to long-term skill needs, while the AWV provides a pathway to gaining points through skilled work and meeting temporary labour needs. Now, an important point of these changes, they aim to set clear expectations about who is eligible for residence and who are not, so that people can make informed decisions from the beginning. Okay, so thank you to everyone who submitted a question during the registration process. I will now invite my colleague Lauren back to assist in answering some of the commonly asked questions. Okay, the first question, for roles that are on the green list as well, now why would somebody apply for the new SMC instead?
Thanks, Brendan. Me again. You'll be sick of seeing my face, everyone. So the answer to that is people in occupations which are on the green list may also be eligible for SMC. Yes, that's true. They may be very much eligible for both. Applicants, as always, can choose which pathway they wish to apply for. It really depends on their personal circumstances. It's always a very personal choice. For example, qualifications and previous time spent in skilled employment in New Zealand may play a role. Thanks.
Okay, so next question. Why is an overseas work experience being recognised in the new SMC?
Thanks, Brendan. So we've definitely talked about this one prior, but I think it's important to reiterate the focus on skilled work in New Zealand means migrants can demonstrate a record of employment that INZ can verify. We recognise overseas work experience is an important measure, of course. However, it has not been included as a key skill proxy. Because the current point system has shown that verifying overseas work experience is complex, time consuming, and often impossible for us to do. Overseas work experience can be recognised indirectly where a professional body has assessed it as part of, for example, occupational registration. Thanks.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, have adjustments been made to the SMC to accommodate the trades following consultation?
Yes, the trades. So following consultation on the original SMC proposals, the training requirements for inclusion under the registration skill proxy were reduced from 3 years to 2 years. This will allow a larger pool of tradespeople to qualify for residence. Reducing the training threshold for occupational registration means that people who gain registration in occupations such as line mechanics, drain layers, external plasterers, and cable jointers now have a pathway to residence through the new SMC. This full list is available on our website. Thanks.
Okay, so if someone claims income at 1.5 times the median wage and also claims 3 years work experience at 1.5 times the median wage, and the median wage at the time the work experience started was $27.76, meaning they need $41.64 per hour. Now, if they remained on that wage for the full 3 years, can they count that work experience even if the median wage has increased, but their pay has not?
Yeah, so this one's quite a complex one, but it's one that does come up quite a lot. So it's really important. So yes, they can count this work experience and they can remain on the same wage for the 3 years if they remain in the same employment. However, when they apply for residence, they will need to meet the current or current at the time they were invited to apply for residence, the 1.5 times median wage to qualify for bonus points for income, not the 1.5 times median wage that was in force at the start of their work experience. If they change employment at any time during this 3 years, for the work experience to continue being counted, they will need to be paid the equivalent of 1.5 times the median wage from the point in time they start their new job. We'll take a breather. And part 2, needing to meet the current at the time they were invited to apply for residence, applicable wage threshold, not the original wage threshold when someone applies for residence, is the case whether or not a person has claimed points for income as well as for skilled work experience in New Zealand, i.e., it is still the case even if no income points are claimed. So again, it's that meeting it at 2 parts as we discussed prior. Thanks.
Thank you for that detailed answer, Lauren. So the next question, for the new SMC, can overseas qualifications be assessed by NZQA and points claimed?
Yeah, so points can, of course, still be claimed for overseas qualifications. If you have a qualification from outside of New Zealand, you may need to get it assessed as with the old SMC by the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, who we call the NZQA. We will be updating our list of overseas qualifications that don't need to be assessed by the NZQA. The list of qualifications exempt from assessment, the LQEA, as many of us will be aware on this webinar today, is a list that sets out the comparable New Zealand qualifications and credentials framework, the NZQCF, a bit of a tongue twister, for the level and type of specified overseas qualifications, allowing immigration applicants with a qualification on that list to bypass the international or the IQA requirement. Just a couple of things. Note that the NZQCF, as I just mentioned, or previously known as the New Zealand Qualifications Framework, is still referenced very widely in our operations manual if you do come across it. The updated LQEA, the list of qualifications exempt from assessment, will include the NZQCF level and type for the revised point system under the new SMC. The updates will be delivered in phases, and the first phase will be completed before the new SMC takes effect on the 9th of October this year. Further information will be available very soon. Thanks, Brenton.
Okay, so what will the fee structure look like? Now I might jump in and answer this one. So the fee for the new SMC residence visa application will remain the same. For green list and sector agreements, the fee will be the same as SMC. Okay, has anything changed with English language requirements regarding SMC?
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. So we got this question quite a lot during registration. And it's really important to note that nothing has changed here in terms of the English language requirements. Nothing has changed between the current SMC or the old SMC and the new settings, the introduction of new settings. And we're not going to go all through the English language requirements here, as we don't have enough time. But nothing has changed. Thanks.
Okay, so we're on to the last one. Approximately how many applications under the new SMC is INZ expecting to receive per year?
Yes, this is a this is a really interesting one. So for 2023-24, we are expecting approximately 764. For 2024-25, we are expecting 1,906. For 2025-26, we are expecting 2,860. Thanks, Brendan.
Kia ora koutou. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the live Q&A part of our webinar. So my name is Brendan Gardner. I'm an engagement partner based in Tauranga. And I just want to encourage you to please upvote the questions as you go. We have about 810 people currently in the webinar. So to cover the questions that are most important to you, please upvote. There have been about 3 that are neck and neck and are jumping around now that I have mentioned upvotes. So bear with me as I do that on the screen. And acknowledging, as Lauren mentioned at the start, there are some topics that we can't address today, but we do take away all the questions you've raised and note them. And, with a couple of comments about migrant exploitation, please, with any concerns, do contact us or Crime Stoppers or a trusted authority that you may be working with. Well, I'm very blessed to have quite a big panel of people today, made up of people from operations policy, some of the technical teams within our visa operations team, education, and MB policy. So what I am going to do shortly with each of the question, I might suggest a team that may wish to answer it. And if any of the teams do indicate they'd prefer to take the question away to come up with a more detailed response, we will get back to you with some of those. But we'll do our best during the live Q&A, and I can see there's actually been quite a big change in the voting as we go. So I might initially invite our operations policy for this first question around ANSCO skill levels. This may be for Krishan, or it may be for one of the others in the team. But under the highly skilled residence instructions, so you're being paid over twice the median wage, do you have to meet the ANSCO skill level for the role that you are working in?
I'm happy to answer that one, Brendan, unless Christian is there and would like to.
You can go ahead, Susan.
Jump in, Christian, if need be. So short answer is no, they don't need to meet the ANSCO skill level. They just need to meet twice the median wage. And also just to note that the highly paid pathway under the work to residence category has been absorbed into the new skilled migrant category.
Oh, thanks, Susan. And I think while we have you there, this may be one for you, or it may be for one of the others in the team, is how overseas work experience, might it be counted if it was for a New Zealand-based organisation such as Tourism New Zealand, or I imagine embassies or trade and enterprise could be other options for that? Are there any options that we might have around that?
Okay, so the immigration instructions specifically refer to the work experience being in New Zealand. So they need to be in New Zealand in order for that work experience to be counted.
Excellent, thank you. And in terms of skill level, another question that has been bouncing around the top 2 or 3 most of the way through is claiming points if a license might be provisional or a training license. So does we have any comment on that? Excellent.
Yeah, so in general, any form of provisional for the SMC, any form of provisional trainee, intern, limited registration, license, certification, or anything like that won't qualify for points unless it's specified for that occupation, and there's a list of those on our website. But I think the only exception right now is for medical practitioners. So for everyone else, they need a full license.
Excellent. So really important for that completion. I think the next question may go to MB policy, possibly Claire, and this was a question that was a front runner for quite a while around sector agreements. So do we have any comment on how often sector agreements might be reviewed?
Thanks, Brendan. So the duration of each sector agreement depends on the sector, so there's not one set review period for them. The original batch of sector agreements were generally intended to be reviewed in 2024. So the Care Workforce Agreement, Construction Sector Agreement, Meat Processing and Seafood are due to sort of expire in October 2024, and they'll be reviewed before then. The Transport Sector Agreement has a duration of 12 months, so that will be valid until May 2024. And then the seasonal snow and adventure tourism one will last until 2025. So it depends on the sector.
Cool, thanks, Claire. We now have a question that I think is reasonably, it may go across a couple of the teams with possibly operations policy, maybe policy around healthcare workers, so a number of upvotes here. Given healthcare workers on 28.25 an hour will be eligible to apply for 3-year AEWVs, will that allow them to support partners with partner of a worker work visa applications? So do we have any comment on that? Possibly, oh, Claire's back again.
I'll give it a go and then ask my operations policy colleagues to chip in as needed. So the purpose of extending the duration of that visa was to allow care workers time to complete their qualification. So what we heard from the industry was that some people needed more than 2 years to get to the level 4 pay rate and get that qualification. So that's the reason for that change in the duration. The partner work visa changes, the partner work visa settings are unchanged. So the requirement at the moment is if you're in a job at or above median wage, you can, your partner can apply for a partner of a worker work visa with open conditions. If you don't meet that requirement, the partner may apply for a work visa, but they will have conditions that require them to work for an accredited employer above the median wage. Yeah, does that answer that question? Is there anything else to add?
Opening up to anyone else on the panel. Okay, I think
Sounds good to me.
We'll go with that one. Thank you. And I think there's another one here which I will open up to the team as well. Sorry, these bounced around a wee bit, but one is around the qualification assessments with NZQA. So the first part of the question is really asking about processing times, and we have to be careful what we do or don't say around any other government agencies. So one of the panel may or may not be in a position to comment on that. But I think also the second part of the question is, you know, if there is a delay in getting the qualification assessed by NZQA, would we consider interim visas for skilled migrant category applicants who, you know, maybe just haven't been able to get that completed in time before temporary visas expire? So that may be an operations question, if any of the team would like to comment. Thanks, Krishan.
If someone has an SMC application, have submitted an SMC application and the temporary visa runs out, they would get an SMC interim visa?
Cool, excellent, thank you. And now do we have, I'm just seeing some of the next questions that are popping here. I think we have a couple of those live, and also do please check the answered questions as well. I can see that the team have answered 7 as we have gone as well, so there is a chance your question or a question you may want to ask may have been answered in text by one of the team as well as we go. So there's a question here again relating to qualification recognition. So again, this might be one for you, Krishan, or one of the team that wants to comment. Will qualifications be recognised based on their degree level or NZQA's independent qualification assessment? So the example, and sorry, my screen has just bounced as we go through there. So I might have lost the rest of that question. Sorry, I think someone typed on answer live for it. So let me just see if I can find that question again. Here we are. So for example, will a diploma that is recognised by NZQA as being level 9 be regarded as a master's level, even if the independent assessment only says level 9? And if not, is there any comment that we can make on that at this stage? So sorry, I have found that question again.
For the SMC, if an IQA only says a qualification level and not a qualification type, it would be eligible for less points. So a master's degree qualifies for 5 points, but a level 9 qualification qualifies for 4 points. So if you wanted your qualification recognized as a master's and you needed an IQA to do that, the IQA would need to show master's degree as its New Zealand equivalent rather than just level 9.
Excellent, thank you. And this may be a question for you or for Susan again around the ANSCO level and work experience. So there's a comment that relevant qualification work experience not required for skilled work experience. Is an applicant required to be suitably qualified for the role they're claiming points for skilled work experience as per ANSCO level, or is this not a requirement?
For skilled work experience in the SMC, there's no suitably qualified requirement, but for skilled employment, the current employment, an immigration officer can do a suitably qualified assessment to determine the ANSCO skill level of the role. So no suitably qualified requirement for skilled work experience.
Excellent, thank you. And there's one here around, sorry, Susan, you went on camera. Did you want to add something to that one, or? I think we've got you on mute.
Just going to add for work to residents under the green list, they need to meet the requirements specified on the green list, or if it's under the transport or care sector agreement, the requirements for those specific agreements. So it doesn't specifically refer back to ANSCO.
Excellent, thanks, Susan. And there's one coming up here around dependent child of work visas. So that may be one to ask you or one of the other panel as well, which would be if there's an option for a dependent child of a work visa holder who goes onto an interim visa to switch from visitor visa to student visa. So the question is, they're saying they can see this being an issue where people may not appreciate with a 4-year-old turning 5, there could be an issue with enrolling in primary school. Do we have any comment on that one?
Maybe Paul, or otherwise we might have to come back to that question since our interim visa expert isn't here.
I can comment on that one. So basically, we're going to the children below 18 will be granted study conditions. So even if they're under school age and going into primary school, they'll be given generally study conditions.
Excellent, thanks, Paul. And just a reminder, please upvote as you can go. I can see we've got 69 open questions, but the highest upvoted is now with 13. So I think this one might just be one just to double check with Krishan about with ANSCO again. So it's an upvoted one. Essentially around when we say skilled work experience in New Zealand, do we mean any type of work, even at skill level 5 on ANSCO?
To be skilled work experience, it would need to be while someone's earning at least the median wage, or if they're in an ANSCO 1 to 3 role, or in an ANSCO skill level 4 to 5 role, they would need to be earning at least 1.5 times the median wage for it to be skilled work experience. Or if they had claimed points for income, they would need to be earning that income.
Excellent, thank you. And the next question is, the screen has just jumped on me as it sometimes does. So the next question relates to accredited employer work visas, and this may be an operational related question, but and I think the number is missing in this one, but is there a particular process to apply for the extension of an accredited employer work visa from 3 to, I'm thinking this is 5 years, and will there need to be any fees paid for doing so? Do we have any comment from the panel, or is that something that we may take away for a written update? Okay, I think that might be one that we get back to people on, or maybe something that someone provides a written answer to. And sorry, apologies, every now and then Zoom decides to scroll my screen right down to the bottom of the upvoted question. And I wonder, I've seen about 2 questions bouncing around that I might go to possibly Claire for some initial comment just around policy. There's one around any comment we can make around trades where there may not be occupational registration in terms of, policy we've thought about around there, and also whether there's any comment around chefs who've studied at level 4 and 5 courses in New Zealand. Is that something that you could start us off on, Claire, please?
Sure. Yeah, I can have a go at that. So I think, as one of the earlier questions referenced, the skilled migrant category does allow for some trades to be recognised via registration. Also, tradespeople who are not registered but who are highly paid may have a pathway under the SMC. The green list is sort of complementary to that, in that it provides sort of tailored pathways for specific occupations. Some of those occupations are trades, so electricians, skilled machine operators, and not all of those have a registration requirement. So for the green list, you really need to look at the list of occupations to find out what the requirement is. But in some cases, there is no registration requirement. It might be a wage threshold. So some of the machine operators, the requirement is simply that they be paid a certain wage rather than that they have professional registration. So yes, between the 2 of them, there are pathways for some unregistered tradespersons.
Excellent, thanks, Claire.
Oh, and just on the chefs, no, there isn't currently a residence pathway available for chefs who have completed the level 4 or 5 qualification, as I understand it.
Excellent, thank you. And I guess this may be another one, Claire, that you may be able to comment on, was just policy around age. And I guess there's always a bit of a challenge around timing for this as well. So if a client is 55 years old already, can't wait another year, 2 years for New Zealand work experience, is there anything we're able to comment on in the context of this webinar about age limits for policy?
I think so. It's at the moment, the requirement is that you have to be age 55 or younger. So that applies to all residents, pathways, skilled residents, SMC green list. There isn't currently any intention to change that. And it's really about balancing the benefits that skilled residents brings to New Zealand and the likelihood that the person will continue working in New Zealand, which is the intention for which they were granted the visa.
Excellent, thank you. And I think possibly another one while you're here, which is next on the list, was around if there's any comment we can just make around that change from 3 years to 5 years duration for accredited employer work visa, and the comment is made that the migrant becomes more well sort of settled. Is there any sort of comments we can make around that change or residence pathways?
I can see Monique's got her camera on. That might be one for my colleague Monique.
Sorry.
Happy to jump in here if that's helpful. So the 5-year extension, the extension from 3 years to 5 years, is about balancing the opportunities for employers to hire the skilled migrants that they need, with the migrant becoming well settled in New Zealand. When the AEWV was 3 years, it was possible to have additional AEWVs. Now that we have a maximum continuous stay of 5 years, we've increased the AEWV to align with that 5-year maximum continuous stay.
Excellent, thank you. I think we maybe have time for 1 or 2 more questions, and I think this next one might be one for points possibly for our operations policy colleagues around, and the question is, what is the logic for solicitors to be given 4 points for registration and for LIAs to get 6 points? I'm just wondering whether that is initially one for Krishan or Susan.
Maybe Monique, do you want to answer this one?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I can't always see who's on camera, sorry. Oh, I think you may be on mute.
Sorry, only turned one of them on. I'll take that one away for a written response if you like, because the registrations person's not here today.
Cool, thank you. And an interim visa question is our next most upvoted one. So if we can comment on if the dependent of a student is eligible for the new skilled migrant category, so if the person who applies will they get an interim visa with the same work conditions. I don't know if we have an expert on interim visas who can look at this one. Which interim visa will students get after completion? Of course. This one might, but if one of the panel wants to comment on this one, or whether Celia, you wanted to make any comment. Oh, Paul, I see you've got on camera.
No, I was just going to say maybe that's one to take away unless Celia wants to take it. Otherwise, we can take it away.
Okay, no, that sounds good. And I can't see Celia popping up on camera, so I think we will take that one away. And Lauren, have we got time for one more? Just as a quick check here, does the PhD and points as a final question? So I might look again to Ops Policy and they can redirect me on this one. So it's about PhDs and claiming points. Does the PhD for 6 points need to be a New Zealand PhD? Or are PhD graduates anywhere in the world eligible for New Zealand residency without the cap on numbers?
To get 6 points, the person's qualification would need to be the equivalent of a New Zealand doctoral degree. So that could either through being an actual New Zealand qualification or it being listed on the list of qualifications exempt from assessment, or it could be someone has an IQA showing that the overseas qualification is equivalent to a New Zealand doctoral degree.
Excellent, thank you. I think that now brings us to the end of the live Q&A. So thank you very much for the questions you submitted, and we will make note of all of them and look at how we use that in our future comms as well. So now I believe I hand back to Lauren for the closing of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Brendan. And what a fantastic panel of people. I think there were some really good questions in there, and we managed to answer quite a few today. So thank you to our panel, and thank you for upvoting those questions. All right, so we are coming right to the end of our webinar. We will close it off with our closing karakia, and then we will let you get on with your days. So ka hiki te tapu, kia waiata ai te ara, kia turuki ai te au marema, hui tai kie. Thank you so much to everybody for attending virtually, and we will see you all again very soon. We'll send you out a recording as well. Kia ora.